And Ruth, I'll let you get us rolling.
Okay, Ryan Mitchell. Wow. 20 years, he still puts up with me, and we still communicate. And I've been a mentor as him since I've been in Dallas. He's at Lovejoy High School, 6 times state championship. Just think of that, 6 times. So he's got one more than you, Danielle, but not the gold or the silver but he's got 6 times state championships. And he's also been the National Federation High School Coach of the Year. He's also been 17 times qualified for the Nationals. It would have been 18 if they would have hosted the Nationals in Dallas this year. And Ryan has the privilege and honor and is very humbled to introduce to you this 5-time Olympian. Ryan.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ruth, for having me on and giving me this opportunity to do this. This is like a dream come true for me to get to sit down and talk to Danielle for just a little bit. But let's get right into Danielle, which is why we're all here. Intriguing, Danielle was a high school 3-sport athlete and did a little bit of everything.
4.
Okay, so I need to do my better research right there. This is not starting off very well. You've already corrected me. It's good. He attended Long Beach State and won a national championship in 1993, and then went on to play in the Olympic team in 96, 2000, 04, 08, and 2012. I first heard Danielle speak my first year out of college. I was a brand new coach, and she came to our club banquet at Victory, and she was the keynote speaker. And just hearing her speak and share her heart for 20 minutes can do nothing but fire up a young coach for the sport and for the game of volleyball. So what she's done for athletes and coaches and women in the sport is unparalleled. So this is a huge honor for me. And maybe her greatest accomplishment is her daughter, 10-year-old Giuliani. And so that's kind of where I want to start. Even before we jump back to your playing career, how have you and Giuliani been handling COVID-19, and how's it been having her in the house, and what does that look like?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you guys all for inviting me on the show and interviewing me. I mean, I am honored and humbled for this opportunity as well. I mean, 6 national titles, I only got 1 under my belt. But we're doing fine during this COVID-19 stay at home. I know that everything's kind of opening up. And so I actually was invited to leave my home. And so now my daughter is actually with my dad because I want to quarantine just to make sure that she's safe from my having been out. The social distancing there wasn't, super organized. But I did the precautions that I could. I wore my mask, and except for when I spoke. But we've been having a great time. We've, done the homeschooling, and she really enjoyed having to choose her time that she wanted to work and get her things done. That's one of the benefits of that. And then just finding opportunities for us to hang out and be creative, play a little volleyball. I don't know if you guys saw that little clip we did with just doing volleyball at home. We've done things with like the tennis racket and just hitting like with birdies or foil paper. Just we've built like our little tents and like just had a great time connecting and hanging out with each other where we wouldn't have had as much time had this not happened, right?
Yeah. So I invited some of my teammates or some of my girls from my team on here to listen to you because I can think of no better role model than for them to listen to you. But I was listening to one of your TED Talks from 2019, and you spoke about embracing being an awkward little girl. And I think about some of the girls that I coach and where they're at in their career and feeling awkward at times. Can you tell us a little bit about where that TED Talk came from and how you were growing up and some of that stuff that you experienced as a little girl learning the sport?
Sure. So embracing your awkward while you're going through it sometimes is hard. So it's good when you can hear other people talk about it, right? That talk came about because I was invited, I did an application it was at Mississippi State, and it was talking about, it had to be around the idea of some inner within, thoughts from within. And so that was one of the things that I know that a lot of people deal with, wanting to fit in, wanting to be included. And I remember just myself, I was super shy and quiet, and I didn't always fit in. I didn't feel that way. Like, you know, you'll see if you ever watch the TED Talk, you know, I was name called. I was always tall. You know, I was talked about for not being the fastest reader and all those things. And so when you hear all the negative stuff, even if you have some positive things, you know, my parents were my saving grace. Sometimes you can get caught up into hearing that, right? But with doing this, I was able to come out of my being shy. Actually, it's still there, you know, being that introvert, but pushing through it and knowing the things that's on the other side of your being awkward, you feel so good when you're able to accomplish and achieve things, because you do things whether you're scared or not, or you feel awkward or not, you know. And I think a lot of it for me was just having a great family foundation with spirituality, and just kind of growing in my relationship with Christ and knowing who he said I am. And then as I played sports, that was a big thing for me as well. That helped me come out of being so shy. So I remember Brian Gimalera, he would have us like hit and yell, right? I don't know if anybody remembers that who played with me, but I was so quiet, he wanted me to communicate at somehow, right? So we had to go up, and every time we hit the ball, he thought, you know, you'd be stronger with your attack because of the Cuban players, I think, at that time, whatever. And so that was part of my growth, you know, doing, you know, interviews afterwards. My dad would come and try to interview me, and I would feel like, get away, I don't want any attention on me, get away, right? But he was trying to prepare me for things to come. You know, he already had a vision for me. But I think embracing those things, you know, when you look at people who pay attention to details, you know, rather it's something in math or just seeing something that's a little bit different than I don't know, someone in a band or something like that, when you focus in on things, a lot of times those people end up having successful careers. And I was blessed, even in my awkwardness, to be able to find my place in sports, and then now find my place post-sports in, you know, now I work with financial services, and I also do public speaking. And it doesn't get old, that feeling of awkward or wanting to fit in. You just have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, and then you'll find your space.
I think it's such an inspiration for so many kids who, I don't know, feel the same way you do, or are going through those same things and are able to talk about it and then come out on the other side of it and see someone who was successful and graduated from college and now public speaks and does such amazing things. So that's awesome. Tell us about, you obviously used athletics in high school. You played 4 sports, sorry. What made you eventually choose volleyball and go down that direction for college?
Right. Yeah. So I was blessed to be athletic, and I did a lot of different sports, and I found success in all of them, really. And I think what made me choose volleyball is the team aspect of volleyball. I think it's one of the greatest team sports. Although you have to do your best to be good individually, so you can be great collectively. But I found that the focus wasn't just on me. So in track and field, man, if I had any confidence in, you know, the few accomplishments I made would have been like 3 times the amount. But I always felt like, even with all of those events going on, that everyone was looking at me. And so I wanted to get what I had done and be done. But with volleyball, there's so many different parts of the game. You know, the way you come in and you communicate, it just really feels like a family and a unit. I think more than any sport. I mean, you really have to depend on each other to be successful. Even if one person is highlighted the most for having the most kills or whatever, well, those things couldn't happen without a pass and a good set or being covered or whatever and things like that. So I think that part of the game and being able to, be a different personality, be, dynamic and aggressive on the court, while off the court I might be quiet and shy and reserved, was one of the things that kind of attracted me to volleyball, not really having to be the center of attention, but still being able to grow and be great and help the team grow and be great.
Yeah. Well, fast forward to your college experience a little bit, whether it's a young girl that's on here listening to you or a coach that's helping their kids go through that college recruiting experience. Why did you ultimately choose Long Beach, and what advice do you give to like your players now when they're trying to choose a college and they're going through this hard process? What are some things what kind of advice could you give to them?
Right. So believe it or not, I didn't start club volleyball until I was a sophomore. So that's already ancient. And then I didn't learn until then that I could actually earn a scholarship to go to school. Right. And so in the beginning, I thought I was going to go to Georgia. And then Brian Gimmolero came down twice. I actually visited Miss Ruth over at Iowa because I was going to be a dual sport. So I visited Miss Ruth at Iowa, and then Vivian Stringer was there. But I decided to go to Georgia because it was close and things. But Brian was like, he came back down the second time, even though he hates flying. And he was like, no, if you want to have a successful career, you have to come here. And he convinced my parents to let me go further away on the other side of town, like this cultural shock, like near LA. He convinced me that was a place for me. And of course, at the time, I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. They had a top program there. But Brian also was really well known for developing players to be all-around athletes. And that was something I was interested in too. And obviously it was pre-libero. So I got to play all around, play back row, hit on the right side, hit on the left side, and play the full game. And I saw the players that he had there. And of course, they just won the national championship. So that's why I chose Long Beach. I think when you're being recruited, you have to find a place, that you're comfortable with, the coach, the environment, have great communication beforehand, ask the questions regarding their philosophy, on how they coach, their style, notice the gym culture. All those things are important in deciding, especially now, since kids are committing at age 12. What? And so I think it's really important that you build a relationship with the places and think that you may think you might want to go to, and really check things out and talk to people who have gone there. Reach out to alumni. I don't know what the rules are. I guess I maybe need to see the rules before I say something like that. But find people who can give you some their experience on having gone to that program. Of course, it won't be the same as yours, so you can't judge it all based on that. But I think the more information that you get, the better chance you have of finding a place that you can fit in and make it like home.
So you were considered to be one of the greatest middle blockers of all time. But all middle blockers that I've ever coached want to be a setter. And they're always dying to set. So just throw me a little, yeah, you're one of those. So throw me just a fun question here. If you were to be any position but middle blocker, what would it be and why?
Okay, so about the setting, like I said, I started playing volleyball a little bit late in club, but Ruth Nelson is who got me to love setting. And my dad was like, well, she's a hitter, she's a middle, why is she setting? But it ended up being the greatest thing, and I was able to use it because throughout the Olympics until the libero came onto the scene, the setters would pass and the middles would have to set. And I just feel like you have, so much control of the game as a setter, like you run the show. So setting is always so great, and it's always so fun to play, obviously, a position that you're not in full time. And I was blessed to have come in a generation that I learned to play all the different skills, positions. So I've had a lot of opportunities to play right side, to play outside, even outside against Cuba, whoop, whoop, and we won. So I guess if I were to choose a position now, I don't know. I can't complain about having been a middle because I was truly blessed. And I think maybe the libero extended my time on the national team because you play the front row and then, she plays the back row. So I can appreciate that now, but boy, did I fight it at the time. If you ever talk to Stacy, she would tell those funny stories of how I would ignore her and like, serve, I don't want to leave the court, let me stay in and play some defense. But I think I would probably choose to be maybe an outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a tough position, but it's fun. But I think I would choose, it would depend on the system. I would like to be in a system that an outside doesn't just hit an outside. I liked a system where, back in the day when Tara Cross played, she would be left side and then she would go out and hit a slide from left front, right? So, I don't know. I enjoyed that time. Right now the game is really simple, They try to just, outside, back row, and, the D or whatever you call it behind. Yeah. But those are so fun, such fun times when we did the combinations, the step in to out, or, the outside would come in for an inside set and then I'd go hit outside. So I don't know. I might choose to be an outside, but I might choose to be a middle again. Who knows? I was blessed really at that position. So
all right, I'll let you off with the multiple answer that you just gave. So I'll let you off there. So a lot of coaches think that training the middles is one of the hardest jobs as a coach. And so whenever, I'm in my club gym, I'll say, who wants to take middles? And it's like crickets and everybody looks the other way. Like it's the hardest position to train to a lot of coaches. So give us, you don't have to get real technical, but I'd love that. And a lot of people on here would probably love that too. As a middle blocker, what are you looking for? And what are some step-by-step stuff you would teach a middle when it comes to reading the other side of the net?
Right. And again, I think the information that we have now and that we're teaching now, I would love to be a middle starting to play the game now because we give so much more details that we didn't get as much of before in terms of how you see the game. And so even from young, I would start teaching what to look for. Obviously, the footwork is super important. The hand movement is super important and varies according to your age and your ability, doing the crossover and swing versus, a shuffle hop and all those things. But I definitely think getting them used to seeing the full game from an earlier point of view at an earlier start in their game is going to be super useful in terms of seeing the pass, seeing it to the setter, and then seeing it release. Where is the setter taking the ball? That all takes time, which no one has a great amount of time for, but video works, right? So maybe you can't get it all in right then in a practice, but talking about the sequence of what you're looking at and then making the move. And obviously you're going to have to spend a lot of time on footwork, a lot of time on, when your arms are going back or if you're just going to shuffle and cross over. The main thing is keeping your arms directly over the net as long as possible. So you're getting those stuff blocks and you're getting those great touches. So that's what I would say. I think what I would look at as one of the best blockers is one who is able to block for points, one who's able to, when you're not blocking for points, you're not giving points away by not having your hands in a good position and it's just deflecting where you don't have defense. And also being a good communicator. You're responsible for controlling the net. So talking to your pin blockers, talking to your defense behind you, that all is going to help you to be the best middle blocker you can be.
That's great. Thank you.
And I'm an advocate of not saying just middle blocker. We are hitters as well. We are offensive. So can we change that to middle hitter?
I'm all for that. So, well, you went on to play over 2 decades in the Olympics. So you had to adjust and change your game a lot. And so it's a 2-part question. I'm going to start with the first one, which is when you started getting out athleted toward the end of your career, or the game sped up and you were slowing down naturally, how did you overcome that? And what were things that you had to do as an athlete to compete with people that were younger than you?
I think I'm going to have to disagree with your saying that I slowed down naturally.
I knew you were gonna say that. I knew you were gonna say that.
Obviously some things changed, but I think what made me able to have such a long career is one, just being relentless on accepting challenges, and the work ethic that I had. And I was the best ear hustler. I was always listening to hear what coaches were saying to other players, so that when they came to me, I would already have an edge on what I needed to do next. Playing for many different coaches, and a lot of you will throughout your career, I think you just have to be willing to be fluid and flexible. And each coach has their own system. They maybe have their own style of how they play and the techniques that they have. Don't fight it. Take it in, add it in a pocket, and eventually it's going to make you into your best player. I hear people say that I do things that they don't really see in blocking, the 1 foot takeoff, that people change, right, going to the left to block the right side. But all that came as a result of me playing for different coaches and trying different things. And then it made me be the player that I am. But I would definitely say to continue to compete, you can't be comfortable with where you are. You always have to be looking at how you can get better. Again, I can talk to Miss Ruth, and when I played for her, I would do the extra, and I would run to her house. She would put me on that shuttle 2000 MVP, and I would do some extra jumping reps with her, and then I'll go back home. That wasn't asked of me to do. I wanted to do it. She had it available for me to do. And so even in my last Olympics, after having had my daughter, the team was already set. It seemed impossible that I was going to go from court 3 to court 1. I believed that I could do it, and I put in the extra work. I was there in the morning doing things, and then I left late doing things. And then in terms of the connectability, if there's one thing that I wish I had done more in my career, was taking time to know my teammates better. So towards the end of my career, I actually took time to know my teammates, because there was a great gap in our age. And so we were doing different things, but, there are some things that we still had in common, even if it was just going to the movies or just hanging out at one of their houses, right? And so that was some of the things that helped in terms of that. And then just setting little goals, okay, so today I was able to do the shuttle in this time. What can I do with my strength trainer to help me to be better? So we had trainers and things that also helped with that. Like our weightlifting program that we had specific to our position. And even in my late 30s, I was able to improve my jump by a couple inches. So so I think you can always grow and always get better as long as you're willing to put in the work. Right? And then have the guidance, be willing to ask for help, and always have your eyes open and looking to improve.
So I won't be presumptuous and say your Olympic days are over. I'll just say that now. But your identity has been wrapped up in the Olympics and playing volleyball really your whole life since you were a kid. And a lot of us coaches are the same way. And so a lot of the adults listening, our identity is wrapped up in what we do. Now that you're not playing volleyball as much internationally as far as the Olympic side of things, do you struggle with identity and things other than volleyball? How has that been changing to a career woman now and taking a job versus playing?
Right. Well, it's definitely an adjustment. Not having volleyball in the way that I did from where I am, physically having to be in shape all the time, and then playing volleyball 24/7, eating, sleeping, breathing it. It was definitely an adjustment. I think for me, again, it goes back to my spiritual foundation, knowing who I was in Christ. helped with my transitioning from athlete to a career person. It's really hard, and it's a difficult thing. I think individually, you have to try to have that balance while you're playing volleyball. So again, my last games, I had more balance. I had my daughter. I was, spending time with my teammates. I had the Christian family that I had as well. And so I think having balance while you're playing, obviously they're already student athletes, so being able to balance that. But also having, finding what interests you outside of sports. So what are the things that you like to do outside of sports? And that was the biggest transition. I think for me, that really helped a lot. And knowing, that what I did in sports, great. I learned a lot, communication, teamwork, and all those things. I could use that also in real life. And so it transfers into your teamwork and things that's in sports. You can also use that. It's not just in sports. You can use that in real life instances, right? In your next career. But again, also I believe that if you have balance and if you, maybe you're not spiritual, but you don't just believe your sports is all that you are, because we're not. Like, we have something to offer outside of entertaining, and we have something more to offer outside of that. Like, our purpose isn't just sports. Like, for me, moving into speaking, it's not always comfortable speaking, but I know the story, the ups and downs that I've been through, is not just for me. And so I do it anyway. Sometimes I'm nervous before. But that's okay. You go ahead, because I look outside of me to how I can perhaps help someone else, right?
Awesome. I'm going to ask a little question about overseas, and then Ruth or John, I want you to jump in after this question and give her any questions that the audience have for her before I wrap it up with a few things. What are some experiences that you've been able to have from your overseas days, playing internationally? What are some doors that volleyball has opened up for you that you would not have been able to do if you hadn't have been playing the sport?
Okay, some experiences I've had internationally or playing professionally is one, traveling all over the world. That has been really great, especially coming from Baton Rouge. There are people here in Baton Rouge, Fort Allen, surrounding area that hasn't even left their city. So playing sports have allowed me to play internationally, play all over the world. I've been able to create friendships all over the world. I've seen some of the greatest sights in terms of the Great Wall of China and the Forbidden City. I've been able to go to the Pantheon in Greece and, the Colosseum in Rome. And I guess more than anything is the friendships and things that I've developed all over the world. Like, don't take this time for granted that you have with your teammates, because it's a lifelong friendship that you can develop. And maybe it won't be with everyone, but that's definitely something that I was able to experience in sports that I wouldn't have otherwise. Being able to get a scholarship to pay for my education, and leave with a degree with liberal studies sociology. I haven't used it a lot, but I think it just helps with me, knowing that, I got that checked off. And if I needed something to fall back on, I could go and teach, right? So, it's afforded me so much. Speaking different languages. I speak Portuguese. I speak some Italian. I'm learning to speak more Japanese. I speak some Japanese. I remember a lot of phrases, but not enough to be conversational. But there's this great app called Duolingo. And so I'm learning Japanese now and now I have a longer time because the Olympics will be next year. So I've been working on that. And actually, I would show you, it might take too long. I'm number one right now in my group. But you have to love language and find some way to be competitive, maybe.
Still competing. I love it. You guys have any questions from the audience?
Yes. I just put up a picture. What was it like to play for the only woman head coach that's won a gold medal as a coach and also a player and also coached for the USA? Tell me your story about her, because most people don't even know who she is in this country unless they're, of course, an Olympic player, you know, a high level international, but everybody in the world knows her. Danielle, what was it like?
Well, Jenny Longping, the Iron Hammer, was her nickname, to give you, if that tells you anything about her. She was a phenomenal player and even coach. I mean, she's taken China to new heights, you know, winning the Olympics and winning great tournaments and things. And I think the biggest thing that she brought to our team was making us know and think about the game for ourselves. A lot of the other systems that we were in, they had specific pinpoint places that you wanted to be, that she was just like, that they were just like, okay, this is what we're doing. She kind of left it up to the players to a certain extent to talk about. We go into the room, we watch video, and we talk about it, and we come up with a plan together. So it's not the coach just telling you, this is what we're doing. We're all on the same page on, this is what we're going to do. This is the best thing. And it took some time sometimes to figure out, with all the different opinions, you know how women can be super opinionated, to come up with what was going to work best for us. But I think that really made us closer, because we're figuring out things together. We're not just, you know, a herd following, you know, blindly, right? And so she really brought that part of the game out and made us closer as a team. Now, she designed the drills and things to help us to get to the strategies and things that we were going to get into and have us prepared for that. But I thought she was really great with allowing the team to come up with ideas of how we should work as a team and what system we should run. And it kind of switched up, but depending upon who we played against. So I thought she was really good with that. And then she had this one when she would be on the box doing the defensive drill. And I know sometimes it felt like it was just intentional. You know, you come in and and she'll hit you in the chest, and you go back and then she'll hit it straight down. But I think if you can defend a ball like that, if you can defend against that, you can defend against anything. So again, it was another form of, you know, getting us prepared. But I really enjoyed her as a coach. Mm-hmm.
So she was the only female Olympic coach USA has ever had also.
Yes.
Wow. All right, Ryan, that's great to hear.
So we had a question about, you mentioned offensively the old school style versus the new school style of throwing the ball up and letting the biggest athletes win the ball kind of thing. Which one did you prefer? Your 80s style offense or a more modern offense that's translated into?
I like the combination, because if you look back on videos, maybe playing against Russia or Cuba, the ball would actually leave the screen and come down, right? So those are fun and out of system. You can set up a great block and have good defense around it. I like the combination. I like that the game is faster, but I just miss the little bit of the combination. So if we can merge those two worlds together, what an exciting game. It's already exciting. It's already powerful. And it's already, you know, dynamic. But if you can merge those, man, you wouldn't know what to expect, right? So I think merge the two. Again, I'm not picking one or the other. Merge it together. You know, as you can see, I'm super inclusive.
Well, as far as you've played for some amazing coaches like Ruth talked about, which one had the biggest impact on you and why? And what did you remember from their coaching that you now take on to people when you coach?
Okay, so I've played for so many great coaches. You know, it's hard to just pick one coach. I mean, all of my international coaches, I mean, there were a few that may be not highest on my list in terms of what they taught, but there was still something that I can take for them. So first of all, I want to say all the coaches who I was blessed to have crossed my path were good for what I needed at that time, right? There was something taken away from it. So you can always take something from any coach that you have. I think, again, I've spent like 4 years with Brian Gimmolero, and he came into my development at a time that was really critical, and just developing that belief in the things that I could accomplish. And because even in 12th grade, as a senior, after I was receiving all these email, letters and things, there was letters, so I still have a box of that for scholarship possibilities. I didn't know what that potential could be, right? And I borrowed someone else's belief that I could even be an Olympian. So I think that influence from him in having me believe in myself even more, that I could be an Olympian. And just from the work that he'd done with the players, he would be one of the more influential ones. Ari Selinger was a great coach, and he, in my time in Japan, I played there 2 years, like he let me play, be a passer, and when it came to the games, he ended up pulling me out, but I got that training in, I got to hit outside, I got to hit from the back row. So having those experiences, that helped me. And then he would always tell stories about things that Rose did before and how Flo was before. So those are different motivations on, okay, this is the potential that I can work up to. I guess one of the things I would take away from, and that influences my coaching style, I was not ever an athlete that a coach had to yell at me to get me to be my best. And I think the best coaches are those who know how to talk to each of their players. We're not all one. So that's something I took away. My personality is not to yell anyway, but I think there's always a way that you can communicate without that aggression and still have mutual respect. And so that's what I take to my athletes that I train and work with, to smile, even when I'm gritting my teeth. It was actually commented that sometimes this thing that I think I've tamed, it might go up or my eyes might get big. But when I get to that player, I come up with how can I make this player hear me to be better, give them some good information, mention how they can improve, and then something else that they did well. So that's something that I try to take to the athletes, because I think it's more well received and they're willing to work for you when you're treating them with that kind of respect.
Hey, Danielle, I've got to say, Dave Bowes has asked 3 questions. Ryan, you go ahead and ask the question, but make sure you recognize him.
Oh, Dave, man, Dave came in with a plan with the Exterminators. I played 2 years with the Exterminator as player coach, more coach than player. And last year I had a great first game. It was right after I come off of injury. I don't know if any of you heard my story or not, but I just come off of my injuries, and man, he took the stats and he said, man, you had the highest hitting percentage. Now, granted, it was only 3 sets, but I maximized that. I had a block, I had a serve, and I had a dig. So it was a great first game, and then I had to sub myself out. But Dave was great. Thanks, Dave.
So does having a daughter change the way you coach?
Just having a daughter change the way I coach. I don't think it necessarily changed the way I coach, but I have been proactive with talking with parents who coach their child and seeing what their relationship is. Right now, Giuliani enjoys our time together, and to the extent that she's willing to work, then I'm able to influence her. When it's not fun for her anymore, I'm very conscious of not over pushing. So I don't think it's changed the way I coach, but I definitely will enjoy the time that I have with her as long as she wants me to have it, right? I was on a call with Lloyd Ball, and he was like, his dad was super hard on him. He knew it, he embraced it, and it helped him become, a great Olympian. I'm trying to find the balance in that, because you want to treat all your players fairly, right? Maybe it's not equally, but you do want to be fair in how you treat your players, your athletes. So I definitely want to keep that in mind as I coach Giuliani.
Well, one thing girls constantly struggle with is confidence in their play. Is there a time where your confidence has been shaken or wavered? And is there any concrete ways that you could come up with to help an athlete out during that time?
Listen, even as a 5-time Olympian, there's always times that your confidence is going to be shaken, right? I think the biggest thing that you have to be, I tell you, like, when I tried for my 5th Olympics and was blessed to make it, it was the hardest thing ever to have the coach come up to me after I finally was named to the team, a travel team, a roster. I sprained my ankle like a week and a half before we did travel, and for him to say, hey, don't worry about it, we'll be fine without you. Like, what? Like, what is that for confidence? I mean, I played 4 Olympics. You don't believe in me enough to get back ready for this tournament that I worked so hard for. So then I had a choice to make. Like, am I going to take that and sulk and be like, I'm not good enough? No, I used that for fuel. And I worked really hard. I showed them that I could move. I still wasn't taken, but at that point it was more for me, like to know that I could do it. So I think your belief in yourself, I think there's a stat out there that's like 80,000 thoughts per day. 95% are repetitive. And I don't know how many of them, of that 95%, depending on the person, could be negative. So making sure that you're talking to yourself positively, you know, doing affirmations is something that can build confidence. There's something I learned about as an adult. It's called a mirror exercise. That can build your confidence. And if you go to the DanielleScott.com, you can subscribe and get those 2 downloads for free. And my TED Talk is on there. But those are 2 concrete ways that you start believing and building that image of positivity in your mind, and it helps with your confidence. And I think in volleyball, there a lot of times, I remember when I went to Italy, as I had experience, I can say when I was coming back to the team. And I would always go after my birthday, which is in October. And so they wanted me to come before, but I was confident that I could hit off anyone, right? My first game, maybe a day after arriving, had only 1 practice. I could not kill a ball to save my life. Like, it was like put a bag over your head, ugly. But it's a sport that you can focus on other things. So I ended up having 11 blocks that game, right? So I couldn't hit, but I had success in a different area. So when you're not feeling confident in one skill in volleyball, then you can focus on something else. And then another good thing is stop thinking about yourself. Think about your teammates. Start giving them some encouragement. Seeing what they're doing good. It's infectious. And then it takes your focus off, oh, I'm not doing this good. And you're putting that energy, you know, of good energy out towards someone else. And then all of a sudden the game is back, you know, in your grasp. And then you go work on whatever you weren't successful at.
Yeah. So moving on to just a little bit about your personal life, you've experienced some extreme loss in your life personally. And you don't have to get into that if you don't want to, but more how do you trust God when you've talked about your faith being such an important part of your life? How do you trust God when you're experiencing those really low, deep places in our lives?
Right. Yeah. So these last several years, you know, since I retired, has been challenging. But you know what? That's life. And sometimes I'm like, okay, God, that's enough. I hear you. But I think it's a part of trusting God is, you know, and being a Christian, it doesn't ever mean that life is going to be easy. I think if you look at all the things that happen in your life that's positive or negative as being some type of life lessons, what can I learn from this? Oh, I did great at whatever it was. I was able to achieve that goal. Okay, what can I learn from that process of being great in that specific thing? So my looking at all the things I've been through over the last several years, you know, I lost everything in my house. You know, I had to start over that. My mom passed, who was my backbone, like, and the greatest believer in me. And, you know, obviously along with my dad, I my grandpa passed. And then the most recent obviously was a couple of years ago when I saw my sister killed in front of me. And then I was injured. Like, how do you get back up from that? How do you keep believing? I know it's hard for people to find the silver lining in things, especially when it's something so horrific as a murder. But it's brought about domestic violence awareness for me. So I try to share that with other people. Again, not focusing on me, but focusing on how I can help other people and trusting that this is a path that God has led me in, not resisting it, but stepping into it, whether you're uncomfortable in it all the time or not. And so that's how I'm able to get up from failures. And then surrounding myself with people who speak life into me as well. People who are creative in different ideas and things. I think that really helps who your support system is. And then having, those great relationships.
Very good. Thank you. So as a teammate and playing internationally, you're surrounded by so many different individuals with different political views, different spiritual views. Like, you're surrounded by people that think differently than you, just like we all are. How do you operate in a team environment when you're surrounded by people that have different views than you do?
I think that's just really knowing who you are. Like, everyone's not going to be the same, and life would be super boring if everyone's the same. Like, it would be like this Groundhog Day when we were in the house all the time. If you weren't creative enough to find ways to be active and entertain yourself, right? So just knowing that everyone is not going to believe the same, everyone's not going to do the same activities. Find those things that you can have, that you do have commonality with. If it's, reading a book, the same book, or if it's going to a movie, if it's listening to music, maybe it's not, you find the music that doesn't have the bad words in it, So there's always ways to find, to connect with your teammates, and there's always going to be something that's some types of commonality. It's just you have to be willing to look for those things and be open. Just take time to talk, and before you know it, you're going to find out, hey, I didn't know you like that too. And it's just as simple as that. But sometimes we think someone is so different, and you never take the opportunity to know more about them. And again, that's one of the things that I wish I had done a lot earlier in my career.
It's so refreshing to hear you speak. You feel like someone who just has such a unique voice and perspective throughout all this. But when did you find that voice? Like, when in your career or development did you find your inner voice to speak up and say what you believe?
Yeah, so I don't know if I can pinpoint an exact moment that I found my voice. I think it came, sometimes we relate having a voice to your success and thinking that someone will hear you more because maybe you score the most on the team. But it's not that. I think we all have different roles, and leadership is seen in different ways. So I think in my career, as I realized that, of course, confidence and playing better helped. But at a certain point of your career, everyone's going to be equally good. And so how do you lead and have a voice in that, right? And you just have to know yourself and how you can communicate your thoughts. And people will receive it or not, but you have to take the chance to express yourself. And you'll find that your opinion matters more than maybe you even believe yourself. So I think, I don't know exactly when it was developed. Maybe I can say it started with me getting that energy out when I hit the ball, like, oh, I do have a voice there. But it continued throughout my career. I mean, I know when I first joined the national team in 96, it was not the competition that we grew into as an Olympic team, right? And I remember speaking up. I was actually just cheering someone on. And I commented, like, oh, just a little bit higher. That would be great. Huh? And I was just totally shut down. Like, I can speak for myself, right? And so in that moment, I could have been quiet and just not done it again. Actually, I was. But eventually I found ways that I could, who I could go to and start talking to first. And as I got comfortable with that person, then I explored off to someone else that I felt comfortable talking with first. And so those are different ways that you can at least start to know that, or rather know that what you have, it's different to say. It's different than anyone else. And it may be received right off or not, but it's important that you express it because it will land not always on rocky grounds where it's like not taken, but so it's going to land on someone and it's going to grow and add value. So take a chance.
So back to volleyball a little bit. We got a couple questions. Someone asked, who was some of the opposition people that you went against that were the hardest or most difficult, and why?
Wow. So I will go back to the Cuban national team. They were fierce from their warm-up to playing. But once you get over, they're setting 50-50 and crushing the ball, I would say Carvajal was a really good opponent, and Hegel Torres. Those were the two middles. I was like, whoa. I mean, they were like this over the net. And also, but from the U.S., when I joined the team, Elena Oden was a big influence on me. She just was so naturally good, it seemed. Sometimes she would hit the ball from the back ring with a fist, but she was really successful with that. So she was someone who kind of like, we roommate together and kind of, guided me in my Olympic journey during that time. But there are so many great players. It's hard to name any one or two that influenced me. There's so many good outsides. It's really hard to say just one or two. I mean, and I've had so many great setters too that helped me be as good as I was, on the offensive side. So, yeah.
Very good. John, Ruth, you got anything?
Okay, I'm ready. Danielle, Wednesday night, USA Volleyball had the first virtual banquet, which there were 30-some people recognized virtually. And they've never, ever had this, of course, COVID-19. But special, for me especially, you received the Flo Hyman All-Time Great Player Award. Tell me what that means to you. Right. Well, obviously, Flo Hyman was gone too soon, but she was such a great player. I mean, if you can look her up online, and you've done a great job of having her website up. But the things that she stood for, her work ethic was great, and just someone that you can model yourself behind. She did some really great things for our country, and that I was named as a player to be a recipient of an award named after her is just such a great honor, and it means a lot to me. And a middle blocker at that, Flo Hyman, for 10 years, playing in Japan, and was recognized when she passed away, Danielle. When she passed away, Japan had her on all the billboards in Japan. She was the most recognized player there, and they couldn't figure out why she was so tall. And actually, DIA paid for her entire funeral to be in the United States. And I'm so happy for you personally to be recognized with her name, because she has really set the stage for so much with women's volleyball. Yes, thank you. And thank you, USA Volleyball, and those who selected me for this honor. When I went to Japan and Korea, they always looked at me as why I was so tall as well. I'm 6'2", she was 6'5". But they also was really curious about my hair. And so growing as a player, like I said, I was really kind of introverted. I didn't want the extra contact. I had to grow into why are you touching me? Stop staring at me, right?
But they were really curious because there weren't a lot of African Americans, going there at the time, tall and with different hair. It was quite interesting.
Okay, John, I know you've got a question there.
All right. For those who don't know, back almost 3 years ago now, at Midwestern State when I was coaching there, we were organizing the team to take them to Buenos Aires for part of our preseason to give them the kind of international experience or something akin to the kind of international experience that Danielle had and I personally had coaching overseas and whatnot. Danielle agreed to come and actually do a speaking engagement for us as part of the fundraising, where we got the mayor to come out and a bunch of people from the local military base and people from the community and a bunch of club kids and all that. So it became a really good community engagement night to help everything go along. And actually, I think the only time I got to watch you in person was 2013 at the Pyramid for the alumni game.
Yeah.
Because I was there. I was actually in Long Beach at that time. I'd spent a couple of days with Brian during preseason, and he set me up with tickets for that match. I remember watching. And I had and I was there with my father's youngest sister, my Aunt Mary, who was teaching at one of the community colleges there. She'd never been to a volleyball match, so that in and of itself is already an experience. And she had some interesting things to say about Brian's hair, not surprisingly. But the question I've got for you is coming from a coaching perspective. You've obviously been on a lot of different teams, a lot of different coaches. So I've got a question from two sides of the same coin. And kind of the negative side is, what are some things that coaches do that impair the performance of their teams? Either it's some things they say, body language. You could feel free to think of whatever perspective you want. And then on the kind of the flip side, the positive side, what are some examples of things that coaches do that really help their teams perform better?
Right. So that question is kind of almost the same answer. Like the flip of that would be the same answer. Could be. I think one of the things that I think coaches can sometimes do that can impair the growth of the particular moment in the game is to overreact, right? When you get so upset about maybe a call that you don't have in your control, and you keep talking about it, and then now your team is waiting, they're looking at you respond this way, and they could buy into that, right? And it's just a distraction. So I think overreacting to plays, or even if it was an error, overreacting to an error, even if it's at a critical point in the game, I think that can work adversely for a team. But again, you have to establish your culture, in order for that to work or not for you. But something I think that coaches do well is being prepared before, and then letting the game play, letting the players play the game when it's game time. If you prepare your team enough before with their training and with your strategy, of course you will have to make most cases some adjustments in the game. But prepare enough beforehand that during the game they don't have to keep looking over to the bench, right? They already pretty much know what to do. I think that is something that some coaches do really well.
Okay, great.
Did I answer
we want to get this one last question from Dave? Yeah. That was perfect. Ruth, do we want to take this one other question from Dave now?
Dave has had more questions than anything. He's like that guy we have to put on mute, right, Danielle? No, go ahead. Ryan, go ahead and ask that question he's got.
Well, Jim's got a question too. It's interesting about Danielle's daughter. And he asks, now that your daughter's coming up, is she a player? And if she is, what type of coaching does she like to play under?
Well, she just had her 10th birthday in April, and she does not play on a team. I put her in a couple of clinics, and we goof around the house a bit, but she's bought into the idea of being a setter. She's a lefty. And so she was initially introduced with everything with the right hand. We even did a Bring Your Own Parent with Miss Ruth, and she was teaching her with the right hand. But then I was like, let's try this left hand out. And I was like, you can be a great setter. And so she's like, but you don't want me to hit? I'm like, you can do it all, but let's think about the setting thing. And so I think what system or format would I like her to be in? The format of being an all-around player, right? Because she's only 10. So learn the full game and learn the full game, not only the skills, but really be able to know the game. So not just from a hitting aspect, not just from a setting or a libero aspect, but know the full game. And I like her to be able to do some fun stuff. We would do as a lefty, if she's on the right side, come around and swing and hit a gap, right? Hit a 31. So I'd like her to have fun with the game, and we'll see how that develops, and if she continues to want to be on a team. Last summer, she's like, Mom, I want to play on a team. So we'll see if that continues. She's exposed to a lot of different things. I definitely believe in playing a lot of different sports because it just helps your overall awareness about your body. So she does soccer, she does basketball, she does the arts with piano and ukulele, drama. So, but eventually she'll kind of start to narrow those things down. But for now, just have her exposed and doing a lot of different fun things.
So Danielle, don't be modest. At age 8, she was jumping 14.7 inches. I tested her. So that's the truth. And think of what kind of athlete you're talking about at age 8 years old. I know a college player that didn't jump that when they came in.
Yeah. So at the tryout in February, I think I texted you, she jumped 20.9.
Yeah.
So she's athletic. She's fun. She's got a great personality. So we'll see. I'm just going to support her whichever way she decides to go.
Great. Ryan, you've done a great job, I have to tell you, too. Danielle, do you not agree?
Yes. Well, this has been so fun. Just having a conversation, talking about life, talking about God, talking about volleyball. Hopefully you guys have found some value in what I've had to say. If it's just one thing, I just want to say have fun with the sport. Be that ear hustler as a player, so you're always listening and trying to grow and get better and connect with your teammates because we're meant to do life together. And if you're struggling with something, ask for help. There's people always willing to help you, whether it's on the court or off, you just have to go out and seek it.
Very nice. All right, John,
Thanks
you
so
get to
much,
close
Danielle.
out.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Ruth. Thanks, everybody who showed up, both on Zoom and on the Facebook stream. Dave, for all your questions, of course.
And Danielle's contact information for everybody.
Yep. Yeah, everybody could see that. I think hopefully you could see that on the screen. You should be able to, unless maybe you're on the phone.
If you left some comments in the Facebook, I can go back and answer some of those questions. I did that with another
Okay, that sounds
call
good.
that was one.